Will Becher, you directed Shaun the Sheep movie, Farmageddon, the sequel to the Oscar-nominated first Shaun the Sheep movie. What made science fiction seem like the right lane to go down for the sequel to the first Shaun the Sheep movie?
Well, the first Shaun movie was a bit of a sort of gamble in a way at Aardman. We were obviously very keen on Shaun and his world, but we really didn't know how it would pan out for a feature. And so the resulting film and the accolades that it won, it sort of gave us that notion that we could take Shaun further. And in the second film, we really wanted to do something quite different. There was an idea from the studio to go a bit more high concept. And science fiction is something that we'd never really done before, and something that everyone in the studio just loved the idea of, because ultimately Shaun, he's like a kid, and the thing he loves the most is adventure. And in this film, we get to put him in a spaceship and let him fly it for a bit. So it was that, and a combination of visually, certain things seemed to click. The isolated farm, and that's quite a common starting point, that sort of lonely, quiet environment. We also thought about bringing something to the farm rather than Shaun wanting to go on an adventure from the outset. So all those things sort of slotted together. And then ultimately Nick Park came up with the title Farmageddon, and it was sealed.
So before this, you've done a lot of work on other stop motion works. And I wanted to know, is there something specific about stop motion that led you to gravitate towards it and work in it?
Yeah, I mean, I started animating when I was a kid, really, at home as a hobby. And I grew up in an era that was very, very full of animated commercials. Aardman, obviously, as a company, it's been going for about 40 years or longer now. And ever since I saw those early characters, there's a character called Morph, which is a little red clay character who one of the founders created. And he was on TV, and I just loved his world. I loved the fact that he was a real piece of clay that lived in this tiny world. And so when I started animating myself, it was something that I realized I could do. I could make miniature worlds, and in a way, it's like being a film director in your bedroom. You get to create everything about it. And I guess it's as soon as I saw that, and as soon as I realized it's something I could do, I wanted to get better and better at it. And I just fell in love with everything about it. And actually working at Aardman, you're surrounded by these incredible worlds, which are all built by hand and really exist. So as a director, it's just a joy to be immersed in the film, literally and physically. You're sort of walking around in that world.
Stop motion is known for being a very time-consuming form of animation, and some sequences can be extremely difficult to film. And I was curious, for this film, what were the toughest sequences to animate for the film?
Well, we had a lot of fun doing this. Myself and Rich, my fellow director, we split the film pretty much into two separate sequences, and there were several set pieces which in stop motion are particularly hard. So anything that involves a camera move or lots of characters is multiplying the amount of work that goes on. So I think there's a scene in the supermarket which took the entire production to shoot. It took a whole year of filming with 2 animators working solidly, and that doesn't even cover building hundreds of miniature products for the shop, which lots and lots of which had sort of references to sci-fi films and comic touches. But yeah, the supermarket scene was a big one. And then anything like chase-wise, there's a combine harvester that goes out of control. There's obviously a spaceship that goes out of space, and then a huge set piece right at the end, which involved this fairly enormous prop, which we couldn't lift without the use of scaffolding. So there was a lot of challenges to make it, but it's just so much fun.
One of the things that's very interesting about the Shaun the Sheep movie, or this one and the first one, is that there's not a lot of discernible dialogue in there. And I was wondering if is that a tougher type of film to make than just a straightforward animated film with dialogue?
I think so. I mean, we obviously rely hugely on the voice actors that do provide the voices for Shaun, but the animators have a real challenge, and we start right at the beginning with the storyboard. I mean, we storyboard everything, to the very end. We go over and over it to try and just see if it's working visually. And I think some of those nuanced bits of performance are incredibly hard to get across without dialogue, and so many occasions we just wished we could explain it with words. But it is also part of the charm. It's what makes it sort of universal, and seeing different audiences reading the same story was fascinating. But I mean, I love performance as well. I was listening to Glenn. I think I come at all the projects I work on as a performer, and so Shaun is the ultimate sort of character, really. Everything that comes across has to come across visually, and our animation team are incredible at what they do.
So, I mean, you working at Aardman. You've been working at Aardman for a while. What is when you started working in stop motion, the idea that you could work at this premier studio specifically for that ever cross your mind?
Do you know what? I mean, it's funny. I actually started as an intern on Chicken Run, making chicken wings. This is 20 years ago, and I met Pete Lord, one of the founders, when I was about 12 years old, and I said to him, how do I become an animator? So I never dreamt when I was doing this in my bedroom that I would end up working at Aardman. And then when I did work at Aardman, the first film I animated on was Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, where I was literally animating Gromit, and Nick Park was directing me. So just a sort of incredible experience. And then to work more with Nick and Pete and the directors of Shaun, and then to ultimately direct myself, was something that I didn't really imagine when I started out, but I feel very happy to be in that place.
One of the great things also about specifically this Shaun the Sheep movie is this is just the realm of characters you have, whether it's the farmer or the guard dog, or the other sheep, like the baby sheep, or the three pigs who I'm so glad come back in this movie. Or do you have a personal favorite character of the recurring ones from this film series? And if so, how come?
Well, I love. I think a lot of the animators and the rest of the crew, they all have favourites, and mine is Bitzer. Bitzer's the sheepdog. So this film really is about Shaun's relationship with Bitzer, and Bitzer's the one that's stuck in the middle. He's the working sheepdog. Shaun just wants to have fun and be reckless. Bitzer wants to have fun, but he's always thinking about the rules and keeping Shaun in check. So he's just a great sort of fall guy, and he's so much fun to mess about with on screen. So we put him in some really embarrassing situations in this film, and he gives us so much pleasure just in that slightly British way of never being able to say exactly how he's feeling, but you know how he's feeling because he's the butt of all the jokes. But I mean, in this film, we put Shaun through that emotion. So we send Shaun off with a character that is like Shaun times 10, and Shaun has to be the one that's sort of dealing with this irresponsible child. And that was really nice. That was really fun. So actually, by the end of it, Bitzer and Shaun do understand each other a lot better.
And what were some of the things that went into designing the alien from the movie? Because you can go in all sorts of different directions there. How did you end up with that design for that character?
Yeah, well, she's called Lula. She did start out as a different character. We actually redesigned her midway, sort of early on in the film. It's a real challenge because Shaun is so well known and he's so iconic. I mean, he's known around the world. He's Aardman's most famous character, actually. And so his very iconic, simple design that looks simple on paper, but actually is very clever in its simplicity, we really had to try and find something that would fit into that world, but also felt like it was from an exciting new place. So we had some amazing concept artists working on different designs, and also our model making team at Aardman actually did a whole raft of lots of different ideas. And early on, this character Lula was very small, and then she'd grow into this huge monster when she got hungry. So that was a storyline that sort of dictated some of her design. And the other thing that influenced it was this idea of a sort of underwater world. So we took some inspiration from ocean and deep sea creatures, and that fed into her color scheme, but also into her shape. And actually, one of the story artists, Ash Body, in the end, he came up with this sort of iconic Roswell-style UFO for the head, and then underneath the thrust, the tractor beam, which creates her body shape. And when we found that, we realized that would give us a lot of qualities of a toddler. We could keep the head slightly beyond the body and tilt it, and it just gave a really nice, simple silhouette that would fit in to Shaun's world.
Well, Will, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best during this award season, and we look forward to having you back for our panel later on.